officials who saw fit to invest public funds in a private effort that will yield public funds. Public funds are used to subsidize the Olympics. Public funds are used to subsidize conventions of all sorts, and so it is appropriate in New Jersey for some of our tax dollars to go to an African American convention which will benefit the whole state. As you know, I know a little bit about state government as I served as New Jersey's Secretary of State, and I watched people come and go into and out of the governor's office. My office was right across the hall, and when you work on the inside, you get a sense of things that you can't see on the outside. So don't let anybody browbeat you, embarrass you, or cause you to feel that someone's doing the NAACP a favor. This is not a favor for you. It is the way the state does business. So I was in Philadelphia a couple years ago preaching one of those citywide revivals, and the president of the Baptist Convention, the Baptist Association for Philadelphia, which hosted the convention, was leading this effort. I was in his office, and while I was there, a young man came and asked this prominent Baptist preacher if he would funeralize his dog. The dog had died, and you dog lovers know how you feel about dogs. And so the dog owner wanted to have a proper send-off for his deceased dog, and asked the Baptist pastor, and I was just observing, asked the Baptist pastor if he would conduct the services, and the Baptist pastor said, "I'm Baptist, and Baptists don't funeralize dogs." So he said, "Well, do you know somebody who would funeralize the dog?" And he said, "Well, there's a Catholic priest right across the street, and last time I heard, I think he has a ritual that he does for pets and pet owners." And he said, "Would you call him for me?" And so the Baptist pastor got on the phone, called across the street, and the Catholic priest answered the phone, and from the conversation, it was clear that the Catholic priest was willing to funeralize this dog, and the Baptist pastor was about to write down the details to give to the dog owner, and the dog owner then said to the pastor, "Before you hang up, tell the priest I'm going to donate $20,000 to his church." So the Baptist pastor slammed the phone down and said, "You didn't tell me the dog was Baptist." So it's good to have diversity and an appreciation for each other's traditions. In the Republic of Ghana, the United States government has one of the most vast embassies as compared to other embassies anywhere in the world. In Italy, the embassy is a very nice, historical, picturesque complex. But in Accra, Ghana, the embassy is much more than a quaint complex. It is, as it were, American headquarters for all of West Africa. It is vast and awesome. But 2 blocks away from the embassy, there is an historical site in Accra, where it is the residence of W.E.B. Du Bois. In that residence, it has his doctoral robe that he received when he became the first black PhD to graduate from Harvard. And in that edifice, there are artifacts from many of his writings. Whenever I've taken groups of people to Ghana over the last 12 or 13 years, I've always made sure we go by the home of W.E.B. Du Bois. Because were it not for his genius and his courage and his colleagues that stood with him and labored with him, we might not be here today. Were it not for his clarity of thought, we might not have been able to survive all of the trauma that we've experienced since 1619. Because the only thing worse than experiencing a trauma is not being able to comprehend the very nature of that trauma. W.E.B. Du Bois said in his seminal work, Souls of Black Folk, in so many words, the black experience in America involves a kind of double consciousness. We are American. In fact, we are perhaps the most loyal Americans the nation has seen. And I say that because in contrast to every other group, our loyalty has had as a backdrop the denying of our very humanity. So how do you explain to people who are told by their nation that they are not fully human, yet when duty calls, those same people sign up to fight to defend that nation? These are the people of double consciousness. We are American. That's why the oldest and largest civil rights organization at all of its branches would begin their meetings saluting the flag. Because we are American. And in that salute, our double consciousness always reminds us that we have yet to achieve the reality of the word that we recite. We are not one nation. We are not indivisible. And we do not have liberty and justice for all. We have a double consciousness. We are American. But we are the Americans who have had to grow up in our lifetime. I'm not talking about 200 years ago. In our lifetime, we are the Americans who have had to grow up watching our mothers and our grandmothers scrub the floors and cook the food and iron the shirts for people on the other side of town, while those people allow their children to treat our parents as though they are children. We are American. But we are the descendants of those people who were denied access to their own humanity. And the trauma of having that double consciousness has caused us to boldly wear the badge of being the most loyal Americans in this land. Because our loyalty has had this backdrop of duplicity and hypocrisy and injustice. So when we gather like this, we're gathering to affirm the consciousness which is our legacy stemming from 1909, whose precursor was 1905 in Niagara. And those bold men and women gathered in 1909, the 10th anniversary of that song, that we sang in 1899, James Weldon Johnson, in the face of brutal oppression, while the Ku Klux Klan was rounding up those who were now free, who had been enslaved, to drag them back to slavery, James Weldon Johnson had the audacity to say, "Lift every voice and sing, till earth and heaven ring." And so our gathering is both a celebration and affirmation of the fact that we are Americans, but there is yet work to do. I will not recite for you all of the statistics that we live with every single day. I will not tell you what you already know, but I will remind you that we had pandemic long before COVID. And it doesn't matter what data you observe, it doesn't matter what statistic you read, when it comes to good things, we are at the bottom. When it comes to negative data, we're at the top. So we come now wrestling with this reality that things aren't what they used to be. Thank God. We've come a long way. Thank God we've come from 1964, when in this town, Fannie Lou Hamer and the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party argued for the right for black people from Mississippi to be seated at the Democratic Convention. And unfortunately, when you read the history of Atlantic City, too few historians leave that out. It's almost like it didn't happen. But we've come from a time when black people were demanding the right to attend their own convention. It's a time now when we can thank God for a black woman as Vice President of the United States and a black woman on the Supreme Court of the United States. It's a marvelous story. But while we celebrate the ascendance of those women and others who have exceeded all expectations, we still spend our time weeping with families, because it is still true that you can be stopped because your license plate does not match your registration. And then 15 minutes later, you lie dead at the hands of a police officer paid by your tax dollars. So we have this Charles Dickens type reality. These are the best of times, but these are also the worst of times. In some of our districts and in some of our schools right here in Atlantic County, the post-COVID academic reality is those who were behind before COVID are now virtually lost. I was always challenged in my mind, Kaleem, when COVID hit, and the leaders were quick to say, shelter in place, without adding any addendum for the millions of people that have no place to shelter. It was always mind-boggling to me as I kept listening to hear the reality, to hear people say, work from home. And by the way, your children will go to school from home, without any acknowledgement of the fact that many of our homes don't have broadband, high-speed internet. Many of our homes don't have enough computers to go go around. So mama's trying to work and Johnny's trying to school. Who takes priority? That when we pivoted from live to virtual, it took months for certain towns around New Jersey and around this country to realize that there was a whole pocket of people who had been left out of everything. Because we had pandemic long before COVID. You know that. And so young people might ask, well, do we still need an NAACP? We need an NAACP. We need an Urban League. We need a National Action Network. We need a National Baptist Convention. We need Black Lives Matter. We need the ACLU. We need everybody we can get that will help make America be what America said America can be. I mean, it's not our idea. We didn't write, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We didn't write that. We didn't write E pluribus unum. We didn't write God bless America, land that I love. We didn't write any of that. But we are the inheritors of that writing, and all we want is for America to be what America said America wants to be. All we want. And that's why you are so important. And that's why every ticket that's bought, every $20 that's given, that's why you are so critical to the nation's future. We're not just trying to get black people to do better. We're not simply trying to get more black children to graduate from college. We're not limited in our vision and our scope to have more black people have access to health care. What we are trying to do by leveling the playing field and by bringing the outcomes to some equity, we are trying to help America. How can America be America all over the world, touting our democratic practices and not practicing equity and justice at home? How can America challenge China on human rights and we have the highest incarceration rate in the world? And how can America challenge communists about their lack of democratic practices, and we've got gerrymandering and voter suppression right here every day in America? So this fight for justice is not really about black people. It's really about helping America by saying, until you rectify the injustices heaped upon black people and brown people, and yes, the indigenous occupants of this land who were here long before Columbus. Until you reconcile the gap between what you say and what you do. Until justice does roll like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream, America, you should just quit the United Nations because you don't practice what you preach. So don't be confused. This is not about black people. We are coaxing and guiding and nurturing America to be who America said America wanted to be. So what is our role in that? First, our role is to stay focused. One of our big challenges today among people who really care about justice is to stay focused on justice. For now more than ever, we live in a culture that's dominated by what I call weapons of mass distraction. Who would ever think we live long enough to watch our telephones really be cameras, and most of the pictures we take are of ourselves? Who would ever think that the bathroom would become the studio for Instagram pictures? And while we are preoccupied with the angle of our camera and tucking in our tummies and looking like celebrities, there's a nation bombing another nation, killing innocent people, and we watch it like it's a Netflix movie. Our biggest challenge, as we consider all of the noble issues and the type of work that these honorees are being congratulated for doing, our biggest challenge is to stay focused. To stay focused on reality over fantasy. We've become so diluted in terms of our substance, we really call silly, irrelevant fiction reality television. Who would ever think we live long enough to see our women on television physically fighting with each other, using profanity to demean each other over some man that doesn't care about either one of them? And because we are so vulnerable to distraction, all of the algorithms and the technology that's being developed is really being developed to seize on our vulnerabilities. I looked at a shirt on my phone. I looked at a shirt that I thought I might be interested in buying. I didn't buy it, but I looked at it. Now, every time I get on my phone, that shirt shows up. I was in church, and the preacher said, join me in Matthew chapter 26. And before I could get to Matthew 26, here came the shirt. And you know, when I was younger, I kind of grew up in a household where you went to the store and you saw a shirt you liked, but you didn't buy it. And you thought to yourself, well, I'm going to wait for it to go on sale. And then you wait for it to go on sale. And then you go back to the store again. And then in the back of your mind, you would say, well, if I go back this time and the shirt's still there, the Lord wants me to buy it. Even the technology is conspiring to seize on our vulnerabilities. And if we don't stay focused, we will come numb to the idea that police departments in this country work for us. And we've got to get past the point where the people that we need are the exact same people as the people that we fear. If we don't stay focused, the budget priorities that come from our state houses and from Washington will favor people that don't need help and miss the people that do need help. If we don't stay focused, billions of dollars will stream through Atlantic City. Yet 2 blocks from these citadels of capitalism, there'll be people sleeping outdoors, addicted to drugs and trapped in prostitution. So if you are in the NAACP or support the NAACP, the challenge is, let's stay focused. The second challenge, which is your theme, is you have to keep fighting. Not all fights are done the same way. But there must be a fight. Frederick Douglass said it best, where there is no struggle, there is no progress. And if you want progress without struggle, you're as silly as the person that wants the ocean without the angry roar of its waves. And comfort, therefore, is the opposite of struggle. And somehow our culture has slipped into the mold of idolizing comfort, happy hour, brunch. And there's nothing wrong with a little happy hour. I'm not pastor now, so I know more about happy hour. Nothing wrong with a little happy hour. Certainly nothing wrong with brunch. But not as a substitute for the fight. My wife is from Sumter, South Carolina. Any South Carolinians up here? She wants to meet you. South Carolina is like a cup. The whole state is like a cup. And my mother-in-law was a teacher in Sumter. And as a teacher in Sumter, she supported the NAACP. Thurgood Marshall came to Sumter to help them work through some issues. And my mother-in-law, as she told it, would write checks to the NAACP to donate. And as all of us know, when you write a check, the check goes to the bank processes the funding and then sends the money to the recipient. But the bank in Sumter, when they saw checks being written to the NAACP, they called the school. The bankers called the educators and said, you got folk on your staff writing checks to the NAACP. And so Thurgood Marshall had to come to Sumter to work out a way to collect cash. Because writing a check to the NAACP in Sumter, South Carolina was a threat for the check writer. Now we've got folks sitting back saying, well, you know, I don't know, why did he eat $20? I bought a ticket. Nobody at our table said that. Because the spirit of fighting has left us. And we can't just fight when CNN shows up because there was an incident. We can't just fight with hashtags on Twitter. We can't just fight on a Saturday morning at a Freedom Fund banquet. There should never be a city council meeting without fighters in the audience. There should never be a CRETA board meeting without fighters in the audience. There should never be a school board meeting, planning board meeting, zoning board meeting, university board meeting. The fight has to be 24/7, 7 days a week, 30 days a month, 12 months a year. The fight must continue. Our lucha continua. We're part-time fighters. If there's chicken to be eaten, we'll fight if there's a cocktail hour before the fight starts. But I'm talking about the kind of fight that requires sacrifice. And I'm also talking about the kind of fight that we can't do alone. You know, I was small, I'm small now, and I was relatively smaller than the people in my class coming up K through 12, but I always had a big mouth. And my mouth often got me places where my body couldn't follow up on. Especially if I had a little happy hour before I went out, you know. But I had a friend named Al. And I would challenge people to meet me after school down the street, because I didn't like the way they were talking to me, looking at me, and I wasn't going to take that. And I tell them what time to be there. You be there at 3 o'clock. And I'd call Al and say, Al, I need you around 2:45. Because I realized that my mouth had exceeded my physical capacity. And in this struggle for justice and freedom, we never have and never will be able to fight this fight all by ourselves. Let me give you the translation. Don't get so black that you don't have any white friends. That's what I'm trying to say. Somebody say amen. Amen. Don't you get so Afrocentric and so African descendants of slaves, A. Dawson, listening to Karen Hunter and Roland Martin, and you get all ramped up. We can't do this by ourselves. I'll never get so black that I don't have some good white people hanging out with me. One of my business partners owns this hotel. So I didn't need NAACP to give me a room if they couldn't afford it. I just called my man. Guy was driving down the New Jersey Turnpike. State police pulled him over. And as you know, the New Jersey Turnpike is also United States 95. And so when the state trooper pulled the guy over, the guy said, why'd you stop me? And he said, well, you were speeding. The guy said, I could have been speeding. I was only doing 85. So the state trooper said, well, the speed limit is 95. He said, no, I saw a sign that said us 95. What I'm saying is we have to have some us in our fight. Finally, my brothers and sisters, I'm prepared to take my seat. Not only do we have to keep focused and keep fighting, we have to keep the faith. It was faith that allowed us to shed tears when we saw our boys lynched, but stand strong to live another day. It's faith that causes us to see this new resurgence of explicit racism. See, we thought that after the 60s, that we simply be working through normalizing our relationships. Never in our wildest dreams did we think we'd end up with people in high office who were the reincarnation of George Wallace and Lester Maddox. Our grandparents would roll over in their graves if they knew that there was an organized, well-financed, sophisticated, high-level defense of flying the Confederate flag. And who in their right minds would believe that for the first time in the history of this country, there would be an attack on the United States Capitol? That would breach the structure and then have members of the very house that was attacked describe it as a field trip. But through it all, we've got to be reminded that there is a God somewhere. That's what I want our young people to understand. I was on the phone with young people in Grand Rapids over the last couple of weeks, helping them think through strategy. When you get to be my age, you're an elder statesman. I am an advisor. I've been to jail. I'm too old to go to jail. I've got nothing to prove. Too many young people out there with energy. If I drive 2 hours, it takes me 10 minutes to get out the car. I am not going out there. Amen. But I will give you some advice. And I want them to understand that without faith, you don't have the patience that you need to wait until your change comes. Without faith, you can't reconcile with people that now see the light who then did not. Without faith, you don't understand the difference between optimism and hope. You see, optimism is an expectation of something without regard to the potential barriers. Optimism. And many of our young people, many of our young activists, I love them because they're optimistic. They see possibilities, but optimism sometimes ignores the realities that hope takes into account. Hope says, I think we can make it, we'll probably make it, but you know what? There's some challenges along the way. And we need faith. Because the writer said, now faith is the substance, not of optimism, but of things hoped for, and the evidence of things not seen. So let's keep God in the equation. Let us never forget that had it not been for God on our side, we wouldn't have made it to the Middle Passage. Had there not been a God on our side, we would not have survived the sweltering heat of oppression on Mississippi plantations. Had God not been on our side, we wouldn't have had that double consciousness. We all would have lost our minds and our lives. That's why, Kaleem, I'm so happy about this singing. At first, I was a little concerned, like you. I thought we should sing the whole anthem, lift every voice and sing. But I figured if we weren't going to sing the whole one, at least don't leave out verse 3. Because many times, because the song is long, people leave out verse 3. And we know verse 1 by heart. We can sing it with our eyes closed. Verse 2, we have to open one eye, just make sure we know it. And then when people generally hear that, oh God, verse 3, oh no, we got to sing verse 3. But what we need today is a verse 3 community. God of our weary years. God of our silent tears. Thou who hast brought us thus far on our way. Thou who hast by thy might led us into the light. Keep us forever in the path, we pray, lest our feet stray from the places of God where we met thee, lest our heart drunk with the wine and the Hennessy and the cannabis, drunk with everything, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadow beneath our hand, may we forever stand, true to our God and true to our neighbor.